Hello, Professor Morgan. This is Abe Ferguson, and here is my PowerPoint on classroom management. So first, my first slide is dedicated to my philosophical beliefs, and for that, I went through the book and read through all the philosophers and all the educators, and I found myself to agree with the beliefs of Fred Jones and Marvin Marshall the most. In the book, Fred Jones and Marvin Marshall talk about creating classroom discipline through giving students more responsibility, I would say. If I had to sum it up in one sentence, I'd use more responsibility. And I agree with this because I found through my practicum hours and working in classroom that the more responsibility you give the students, the more aware they are, the more responsible they are, and they just I feel as though they feel more responsible when you give them more responsibility. So the more responsibility you give them, the more responsible they're going to be as young students learning and hopefully forging them into young adults. So I agreed with Fred Jones's positive classroom discipline and Marvin Marshall's giving students more responsibility in the classroom. Next, we'll get to developing classroom rules. So for this, I thought what a better slide to put, or what a better opportunity to put more posters. You put classroom rules, you can just deck out your classroom with these rules. It lets the students know what to expect. It gets your classroom looking good. It creates a positive environment for students to learn. So just a couple that I put on here that I liked. My mom is a teacher and she's a first grade teacher, so she helped me choose out some of these and she told me what she found worked best for her students. So at my school, my mother uses the be safe, be respectable, and be responsible down there on the bottom left of the screen. So for this is what I grew up in because I went to the same school as my mom, even though I didn't have her as a teacher. The be safe it's just exactly what it says right there. Just being safe, not running through halls, not touching other students, pushing other students, starting other fights. The be respectful part is you want to be respectful to yourself, to your teacher, to your peers, and then also be respectful to like the equipment you're using or the utensils you're using or tools. And then the be responsible is more put on to yourself in the students. So you just want to be responsible and you don't want to put yourself in risky situations where you could hurt yourself, others, or anything like that. The next one's right there in the middle, the do your best, and that's, self-explanatory. You always want to do your best. And if you're ever not doing your best, it's just you're cheating yourself more than anything. Next, just the next three are all just kind of classroom rules. And I like these three because they're very colorful, they're engaging, they're easy to follow, they walk you step by step what they all mean. So the classroom rules, the one on the bottom right is kind of like a give me five. It's your eyes, ears, mouth, hands, and feet. Those are the five things. So I'll just be like, hey, students, give me five, and they'll know to look at me. They'll know to listen for me. They'll have a quiet mouth. They'll have their hands at their side or ready to help, and their feet will either be stopped or walking, not running. And then that top right one for classroom rules, there's another one of the be safe, be respectful, be responsible. So like I stated earlier, be safe is like walking through the halls, not running, not putting yourself in danger or anyone else for that fact. And then the be respectful is being polite, not ruining the equipment, not treating anyone poorly. And the be responsible is just holding yourself accountable. And that top left one is the be smart, and I really like that abbreviation they do. So being smart just includes say please and thank you, and they break it down by SMART. The M is make friends and be thoughtful. A, arrive on time, prepared and ready to learn. The R is respect yourself and others, and then the T is try your best. So those are the classroom rules that I'll most likely use, and I'll keep an eye open for other ones that I like to see, and I'll always be asking around and asking other teachers and educators what they do for their classroom rules. Next one's just rewards and incentives. So for this, it's pretty easy. I mean, you'll give them, if they're being good, that means you can get through your lessons more or more quickly, and that allows for extra work time. And then if they get their assignments done and you're allowed to teach, that means you can go out for recess more. And what student doesn't like more recess? And then another reward and incentive that I liked as a student were end of the quarter activities. So these were big activities. These weren't just like little like extra recess and extra work time. These were like if you got all your homework done and you stayed under a certain amount of detentions or fix-it plans and you were passing all your classes, these end of quarter rewards would be like trips to Noah's Ark or trips to a local restaurant for lunch. One time we went out camping at a local park and we got to stay overnight actually. So these are big end of quarter activities, and these obviously there's only 4 quarters in the school year, so there'd only be 4 planned out. But those are the ones that I always looked forward to, and I always knew that I couldn't mess around or screw up or fail any of my classes because I knew if I did that, I'd be missing those activities. And then that's also something the students can hold themselves accountable for, because if their friends want to go with them to the amusement park or with camping, or they want to go out and eat with them, they're going to want their friends to stay safe, responsible, and smart too, to make sure that they can accompany them on the trip. Next one's handling misbehavior in the classroom. So for this, you really want to stay consistent. That's the worst because everyone knows that everyone's had that teacher who wasn't consistent with their handling misbehavior, where they'd say like, if you do that one more time, I'm gonna take it away, or if you do that one more time, it's a detention. And then the student, waits a minute or two again until they do it again, and then the teacher doesn't come through, and then all the other students are like, well, if I ever want to do that, I know I'm not gonna get disciplined for it. So the first big thing about handling misbehavior is consistency. The next one I have listed is uniqueness, and for that is really it depends on the student. I know some students are more problematic than others, so you have to figure out what works for certain students. Not everything, there's not a one size fits all plan to handle misbehavior for students. Then the next one is positivity, and for this you don't want to just talk to the student or just deal with the student when they're misbehaving, because then it could be an attention thing. You want to deal with them and talk with them when they do something good as well. You want to, and even when they do something that's considered a misbehavior, you want to handle it positively. You want to give them a positive sandwich where you give them something positive and then address the misbehavior and then finish it off with another thing they were doing positive. This just lets the student know that they're not only being talked to just because they misbehaved, but at the same time, it does get your point across to handle the misbehavior. Last one is recognition. For this, it's kind of more of the nonverbals when you can see a student misbehaving. Sometimes if you just give them a look or walk by them and you change your proximity to them, a lot of the times that'll handle the problem rather than you stopping class, going to talk to the student or pulling the student out of class to talk to them. Then the student doesn't feel as embarrassed. The rest of the class doesn't focus on that student, and the rest of the class might not laugh at that student if you can handle it these ways. So just recognizing it really helps and can be a really essential tool to handling misbehavior. Another one here is communicating with parents. And this I learned a lot of communicating with parents from the teacher panel we had in class. This, some of those teachers said this, and I really enjoyed this. It's you can't only communicate with the parents when it's something bad or when the student acts out. You have to communicate with the parents when they do something good. You have to communicate with the parents before the school year even to let them know that you're open to talking with them, to emailing with them, to scheduling a meeting with them. Because when you only communicate with the parents when something's bad, they don't look forward to it. They might not want to hear you because maybe they have to get their working. They can't handle all this bad communication. Whereas if you communicate something with them when it's a positive, they'll be more apt to respond to you, to answer the phone, to respond to your emails or letters. And then, like anything, no one likes hearing their student is doing poorly or acting out in class. They like to hear when they're doing something good or when they had a good day. So for that, I really enjoyed the teacher discussion and on the teacher panel. That really gave me some good ideas about communicating with parents and to make sure it's not only when they do something bad. Developing that communication with the parents is really key early in the year and throughout the year for sure. For my first day, some stuff you really want to set up on that first day and really get cracked down on is the routines and procedures. For that, you want to let the students know what to expect when they come to class. You want to have a schedule posted. You want them to know what to expect. You want them to be able to prepare themselves. And then those procedures, you really want like walking to class, taking a bathroom break, taking out your notebook and paper. And even if the students do it poorly, you got to really crack down on it. You got to do it multiple times just to get it through their head. Then modeling good behavior, you as the teacher on the first day might have to do a lot of these scheduling and procedures to let the students see how it's done. You might not be able to explain it the best, or the students might not understand the explanation. So you have to model it as the teacher to show them, give them a visual. Different types of learners, some can handle it just from the explanation, but some need to see it first. And then that last one, create a welcoming and positive climate. I'm going to talk about this later in my PowerPoint, but you definitely want to do that on the first day. You want to let the students know that they're welcome here, that they're all included, and that when you come to school, you want them to be ready to learn. You want them to be positive themselves. Using language for management. This one's not just language. This is nonverbals. This is how you present your language. So the first point I have is positive. You want to be sure to stay positive. You want to use that positive sandwich like I talked about earlier with the positive, negative, and then finish with something positive. That gets your point across while still keeping a positive frame of reference. Next is the nonverbals. I talked about that a little bit when we were dealing with misbehaviors. This is the look, the hand gesture, the stare. You can get that good stinky eye as a teacher. That's always good. That last one is the teacher voice. You got to have a commanding voice up there. You can't let your students overpower you. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you establish yourself as the leader of the classroom and that they need to respect you and listen to you. Then one of my last slides here is creating an inclusive classroom. So like I said, I was going to talk about this later. So first one, you got to include all the students, you got to include parents and guardians, and you got to include all cultures. I have no idea where I'm going to be getting my first job, but who knows what kind of cultures I'll be dealing with, and you got to be sure to include all of them. And with that, you want to be sure to research the culture that you'll be teaching if you have a very mixed community. So over here on the right, I found a really good picture of how or what explained it to me pretty well and that I enjoyed, so I'll keep this in my teacher handbook. And it just says culture. This is focusing on the cultural perspective, and it's just culturally inclusive classroom. So you start there on the top, and you want to always positively interact with students. So with that positivity, really keeps the students positive and keeps you positive. Make sure they're not getting negative and giving up on themselves. On the right there, you go actively discourage classroom incivilities. So if a student does act out or is not allowing them to be inclusive, you got to crack down on that. Bottom there, encourage open, honest, and respectful class discussion. That's with my classroom management. You got to be respectful, responsible, and safe. And you want it to be open and honest. That last bubble there is use inclusive language and appropriate modes of address, and that just deals with you got to be sure to research your cultures and make sure you understand the cultures as best you can to allow yourself to not insult a student or a parent of a student. So that's how you create an inclusive classroom. So, Professor, that was my PowerPoint. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed doing it. I learned a lot from teaching or from creating this PowerPoint, Thank you very much.